What are the hamstring muscles?
There are 3 hamstring muscles, located at the back of the thigh. They flex the leg on the thigh, such as when one kneels. They also extend the hip whenever one, for example, sits in a chair. Hamstring injuries are probably the most common muscle injury among runners. Maintaining flexibility and strengthening the muscle helps to prevent injury. Hamstring muscles are also prone to rangery.
What are the major characteristics of all chordates?
All chordates share a notochord, dorsal nerve cord, and pharyngeal gill pouches. The notochord, a cartilaginous supporting rod, runs along the dorsal part of the body. It is always found in embryos, but in most vertebrates it is replaced during development by a backbone of bony or cartilaginous vertebrae. The tubular dorsal nerve cord, dorsal to the notochord, is formed during development by an enfolding of the ectoderm. In vertebrates, the nerve cord eventually becomes encased and thus protected by the backbone. The pharyngeal gill pouches appear during embryonic development on both sides of the throat region, the pharynx.
What is the record for the greatest snowfall in the United States?
The record for the most snow in a single storm is 189 inches, 480 centimeters. At Mount Shasta Ski Bowl in California from February 13 to 19, 1959. For the most snow in a 24-hour day. The record goes to Silver Lake, Colorado, on April 14 to 15, 1921, with 76 inches, 193 centimeters, of snow. The year record goes to Paradise, Mount Rainier, in Washington, with 1,224.5 inches. 3,110 centimeters, from February 19, 1971, to February 18, 1972. The highest average annual snowfall is 241 inches, 612 centimeters, for Blue Canyon, California. In March 1911, Tamarack, California, had the deepest snow accumulation over 37.5 feet, 11.4 meters.
Who are some of the founders of modern chemistry?
The history of chemistry in its modern form is often considered to begin with the British scientist Robert Boyle. 1627 to 1691, although its roots can be traced back to the earliest recorded history. Best known for his discovery of Boyle's law, volume of a gas is inversely proportional to its pressure at constant temperature. He was a pioneer in the use of experiments and the scientific method. A founder of the Royal Society. He worked to remove the mystique of alchemy from chemistry to make it a pure science. The French chemist Antoine Laurent Lavoisier, 1743–1794, is regarded as another important founder of modern chemistry. Indeed, he is considered the father of modern chemistry. His wide-ranging contributions include the discrediting of the phlogiston theory of combustion, which long had been a stumbling block to a true understanding of chemistry. He established modern terminology for chemical substances, and did the first experiments in quantitative organic analysis. He is sometimes credited with having discovered or established the law of conservation of mass in chemical reactions. John Dalton, 1766–1844, an English chemist, who proposed an atomic theory of matter that became a basic theory of modern chemistry, is also an important figure in the development of the field. His theory, first proposed in 1803, states that each chemical element is composed of its own kind of atoms, all with the same relative weight. Another important individual in the development of modern chemistry was Swedish chemist Jöns Jacob Berzelius, 1779–1848. He devised chemical symbols, determined atomic weights, contributed to the atomic theory, and discovered several new elements. Between 1810 and 1816, he described the preparation, purification, and analysis of 2,000 chemical compounds. Then he determined atomic weights for 40 elements. He simplified chemical symbols, introducing annotation letters with numbers that replaced the pictorial symbols his predecessors used, and that is still used today. He discovered cerium, in 1803, with Wilhelm Hisinger, selenium, 1818, silicon, 1824, and thorium, 1829.
Which metallic element is the most abundant?
Aluminum is the most abundant metallic element on the surface of Earth and the Moon. It comprises more than 8% of Earth's crust. It is never free in nature, combining with oxygen. Sand, iron, titanium, and other substances, its ores are mainly bauxites, aluminum hydroxide. Nearly all rocks, particularly igneous rocks, contain aluminum as aluminosilicate minerals. Napoleon III, 1808–1883, recognized that the physical characteristic of its lightness could revolutionize the arms industry, so he granted a large subsidy to French chemist Saint-Clair Deville. 1818–1881, to develop a method to make its commercial use feasible. In 1854, Deville obtained the first pure aluminum metal through the process of reduction of aluminum chloride. In 1886, American Charles Martin Hall, 1863–1914, and Frenchman Paul Héroult, 1863–1914, independently discovered an electrolytic process to produce aluminum from bauxite.
When was the first geothermal power plant built?
The first geothermal power station was built in 1904 in Larderello, Italy, by Prince Piero Conti. The prince attached a generator to a natural steam-driven engine to produce enough power to illuminate 5 light bulbs. In 1913 the first geothermal power plant with a capacity of 250 kilowatts was installed.
How long was the Mir space station in space?
The first component, a 20.4-ton core module of the Mir space station was launched in February 1986. The core module served as the living and working quarters, including the communications and command center of the space station. 5 more modules were launched and attached to ports on the core module over the next 10 years. Mir had self-contained oxygen, power, and water generation capabilities, allowing cosmonauts and astronauts to spend extended periods of time in space. Scientific investigations aboard Mir included space technology experiments, life science and biological research, astrophysics, and material processing tests. Much of the life science and biological research focused on the effects of microgravity on humans and flora and fauna. Since some of the astronauts spent many months at a time in Mir, it was possible to study the physiological differences in long and short duration missions. Space technology studies investigated various materials for space use and the effects of the low Earth orbit environment on various materials. The Mir space station was deorbited on March 23, 2001 after more than 86,000 orbits around Earth. The space station broke into several large pieces and thousands of smaller ones over the Pacific Ocean. There were no injuries.
What was Maniac?
Maniac, mathematical analyzer, numerator, integrator, and computer, was built at the Los Alamos Scientific Laboratory under the direction of Nicholas C. Metropolis, 1915 to 1999, between 1948 and 1952. It was one of several different copies of the high-speed computer built by John von Neumann, 1903 to 1957, for the Institute for Advanced Studies, IS. It was constructed primarily for use in the development of 3 atomic energy applications, specifically the hydrogen bomb. It originated with the work on ENIAC, electronic numerical integrator and computer. The first fully operational, large-scale, electronic digital computer. ENIAC was built at the Moore School of Electrical Engineering at the University of Pennsylvania between 1943 and 1946. Its builders, John Presper Eckert Jr. 1919 to 1995, and John William Mauchly, 1907 to 1980. Virtually launched the modern era of the computer with ENIAC.
How are the forms of cancer classified?
The over 150 different types of cancer are classified into 4 major groups. Carcinomas. 9 in 10 cancers are carcinomas, which involve the skin and skin-like membranes of the internal organs. Sarcomas involve the bones, muscles, cartilage, fat, and linings of the lungs. Abdomen, heart, central nervous system, and blood vessels. Leukemias develop in blood, bone marrow, and the spleen. Lymphomas involve the lymphatic system.
What is the composition of the Rock of Gibraltar?
It is composed of grey limestone, with a dark shale overlay on parts of its western slopes. Located on a peninsula at the southern extremity of Spain, the Rock of Gibraltar is a mountain at the east end of the Strait of Gibraltar. The narrow passage between the Atlantic Ocean and the Mediterranean Sea. The rock is 1,398 feet, 425 meters, tall at its highest point.
How many people living in the United States are centenarians?
The number of centenarians in the United States has increased steadily over the decades. The most recent census estimates, 2009, indicate there were 55,266 centenarians. Although the Census Bureau asks for age information in more than one way, the U.S. Census Bureau cautions that the figures may be somewhat skewed since birth certificates were not common until the 1930s. Good cholesterol. Conversely, if most cholesterol is in the form of low-density lipoproteins, LDL, or very low-density lipoproteins, VLDL, then arteries can become clogged. Bad cholesterol is the term used to refer to LDL and VLDL.
How long is a lightning stroke?
The visible length of the streak of lightning depends on the terrain and can vary greatly. In mountainous areas where clouds are low, the flash can be as short as 300 yards, 273 meters. Whereas in flat terrain, where clouds are high, the bolt can measure as long as 4 miles, 6.5 kilometers. The usual length is about 1 mile, 1.6 kilometers. But streaks of lightning up to 20 miles, 32 kilometers, have been recorded. The stroke channel is very narrow, perhaps as little as half an inch, 1.27 centimeters. It is surrounded by a corona envelope or a glowing discharge that can be as wide as 10 to 20 feet, 3 to 6 meters, in diameter. The speed of lightning can vary from 100 to 1000 miles, 161 to 1610 kilometers per second for the downward leader track. The return stroke is 87,000 miles. 140,070 kilometers per second, almost half the speed of light.
What is the chemical composition of the ocean?
The ocean contains every known naturally occurring element plus various gases, chemical compounds, and minerals. Below is a sampling of the most abundant chemicals.
What are the general characteristics of a plant?
A plant is a multicellular, eukaryotic organism with cellulose-rich cell walls and chloroplasts, which has starch as the primary carbohydrate food reserve. Plants are primarily terrestrial, autotrophic, capable of making their own food. Organisms. Most plants contain chlorophylls A and B and xanthophylls, yellow pigments, as well as carotenes, orange pigments.
What is memory?
Memory is the ability to recall information and experiences. Memory and learning are related because in order to be able to remember something it must first be learned. Memories may be facts or skills. Memory traces have been described traditionally as concrete things that are formed during learning and imprinted on the brain when neurons record and store information. However, the way that memories are formed and represented in the brain is not well understood.
How does a stalactite differ from a stalagmite?
A stalactite is a conical or cylindrical calcite formation hanging from a cave roof. It forms from the centuries-long buildup of mineral deposits resulting from the seepage of water from the limestone rock above the cave. This water containing calcium bicarbonate evaporates, losing some carbon dioxide, to deposit small quantities of calcium carbonate. CaCO3, carbonate of lime, which eventually forms a stalactite. A stalagmite is a stone formation that develops upward from the cave floor and resembles an icicle upside down. Formed from water containing calcite that drips from the limestone walls and roof of the cave. It sometimes joins a stalactite to form a column.
How far away can thunder be heard?
Thunder is the crash and rumble associated with lightning. It is caused by the explosive expansion and contraction of air heated by the stroke of lightning. This results in sound waves that can be heard easily 6 to 7 miles, 9.7 to 11.3 kilometers, away. Occasionally such rumbles can be heard as far away as 20 miles, 32.2 kilometers. The sound of great claps of thunder is produced when intense heat and the ionizing effect of repeated lightning occurs in a previously heated air path. This creates a shock wave that moves at the speed of sound. In contrast, the longest rainless period in the world was from October 1903 to January 1918 at Arica, Chile, a period of 14 years. In the United States, the longest dry spell was 767 days at Baghdad, California, from October 3, 1912, to November 8, 1914.
What are the advantages and disadvantages of geothermal power?
Geothermal energy is a renewable resource that is mostly emission and pollution-free. Costs to operate a geothermal power plant are relatively inexpensive. It has the potential to produce power consistently, unlike wind and solar power. Currently, drilling for geothermal energy is expensive. Since rocks lose heat over time, new sites and wells have to be drilled.
How hot is lightning?
The temperature of the air around a bolt of lightning is about 54,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 30,000 degrees Celsius, which is 6 times hotter than the surface of the sun, yet many times people survive being struck by a bolt of lightning. American Park Ranger Roy Sullivan, 1912 to 1983, for example, was hit by lightning 7 times between 1942 and 1977. In cloud-to-ground lightning, its energy seeks the shortest route to Earth, which could be through a person's shoulder, down the side of the body, through the leg, and to the ground. As long as the lightning does not pass across the heart or spinal column, the victim usually does not die.
How large is the solar system?
The size of the solar system can be visualized by imagining the Sun, 864,000 miles in diameter, 1,380,000 kilometers, shrunk to a diameter of 1 inch, about the size of a ping-pong ball. Using the same size scale, Earth would be a speck 0.01 inches, 0.25 millimeters in diameter and about 9 feet, 2.7 meters, away from the ping-pong ball-sized Sun. Our Moon would have a diameter of 0.0025 inches, 0.06 millimeters, the thickness of a human hair, and only a little over 1/4 inch, 6.3 millimeters, from Earth. Jupiter, the largest planet in the solar system, appears as the size of a small pea. 0.1 inches, 2.5 millimeters in diameter, and 46 feet, 14 meters, from the Sun.
What is the scientific method?
The scientific method is the basis of scientific investigation. A scientist will pose a question and formulate a hypothesis. As a potential explanation or answer to the question. The hypothesis will be tested through a series of experiments. The results of the experiments will either prove or disprove the hypothesis. Hypotheses that are consistent with available data are conditionally accepted.
What causes hiccups and how can they be cured?
Hiccuping is the involuntary contraction of the diaphragm. When the diaphragm contracts, the vocal cords close quickly, causing the familiar noise associated with hiccups. Hiccups help the stomach get rid of a bit of gas, relieve the esophagus of an irritation, or resolve a temporary loss of coordination between the nerves controlling the movement of the diaphragm. A bout of hiccups can be brought on by eating or drinking too fast or fatigue or nervousness. Although hiccups generally go away on their own after a few minutes. Several remedies have been recommended to cure one of hiccups, a loud distraction to scare the sufferer of hiccups. Swallowing a spoonful of sugar, blowing into a paper bag, or holding one's breath.
Does any type of wood sink in water?
Ironwood is a name applied to many hard, heavy woods. Some ironwoods are so dense that their specific gravity exceeds 1.0 and they are therefore unable to float in water. North American ironwoods include the American hornbeam, the mesquite, the desert ironwood, and leadwood, Cruchodendron ferruum, which has a specific gravity of 1.34 to 1.42, making it the heaviest in the United States. The heaviest wood is black ironwood, Oleolorifolia, also called South African ironwood. Found in the West Indies. It has a specific gravity of 1.49 and weighs up to 93 pounds, 42.18 kilograms, per foot. The lightest wood is Esquinamene hispida, found in Cuba. With a specific gravity of 0.044 and a weight of 2.5 pounds, 1.13 kilograms, per foot. Balsa wood, Acroma pyramidal, varies between 2.5 and 24 pounds, 1 to 10 kilograms, per foot.
What is an aquifer?
Some rocks of the upper part of Earth's crust contain many small holes, or pores. When these holes are large or are joined together so that water can flow through them easily, the rock is considered to be permeable. A large body of permeable rock in which water is stored and flows through is called an aquifer. From the Latin for water and to bear. Sandstones and gravels are excellent examples of permeable rock.
Who developed the periodic table?
Dmitry Ivanovich Mendeleev, 1834 to 1907. Was a Russian chemist whose name will always be linked with the development of the periodic table. He was the first chemist to really understand that all elements are related members of a single ordered system. He changed what had been a highly fragmented and speculative branch of chemistry into a true, logical science. His nomination for the 1906 Nobel Prize in Chemistry failed by one vote. But his name became recorded in perpetuity 50 years later when element 101 was called Mendelevium. According to Mendeleev, the properties of the elements, as well as those of their compounds, are periodic functions of their atomic weights. In the 1920s, it was discovered that atomic number was the key rather than weight. Mendeleev compiled the first true periodic table in 1869 listing all the 63, then known, elements. In order to make the table work, Mendeleev had to leave gaps. And he predicted that further elements would eventually be discovered to fill them. 3 were discovered in Mendeleev's lifetime: gallium in 1875, scandium in 1879, and germanium in 1896. There are 95 naturally occurring elements. Of the remaining elements, elements 96 to 109, 10 are undisputed. There are approximately more than 50 million chemical compounds produced from the elements, registered with chemical abstracts as of 2009.
What is the Kyoto Protocol?
The Kyoto Protocol was an international summit held in Kyoto, Japan, in December 1997. Its goal was for governments around the world to reach an agreement regarding emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases. The Kyoto Protocol called for the industrialized nations to reduce national emissions over the period 2008 to 2012 to 5% below the 1990 levels. The protocol covers these greenhouse gases: carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. Other chemicals such as hydrofluorocarbons, perfluorocarbons, and sulfur hexafluoride were to be added in subsequent years.
How are colored fireworks made?
Fireworks existed in ancient China in the 9th century, where saltpeter, potassium nitrate, sulfur, and charcoal were mixed to produce the dazzling effects. Magnesium burns with a brilliant white light and is widely used in making flares and fireworks. Various other colors can be produced by adding certain substances to the flame. Strontium compounds color the flame scarlet, barium compounds produce yellowish green. Copper produces a blue-green, lithium creates purple, and sodium results in yellow. Iron and aluminum granules give gold and white sparks, respectively.
What is killer algae?
Caulerpa taxifolia, killer algae, was introduced to the Mediterranean Sea in the mid-1980s when the Oceanographic Museum in Monaco dumped the bright green seaweed into the sea while cleaning the aquarium tanks. Caulerpa taxifolia now covers 32,000 acres of the coasts of France, Spain, Italy, and Croatia, devastating the Mediterranean ecosystem. The species continues to invade the Mediterranean today and appears to be unstoppable.
How is petrified wood formed?
Petrified wood is formed when water containing dissolved minerals such as calcium carbonate, CaCO3, and silicate infiltrates wood or other structures. The process takes thousands of years. The foreign material either replaces or encloses the organic matter and often retains all of the structural details of the original plant material. Botanists find these types of fossils to be very important since they allow for the study of the internal structure of extinct plants. After a time, wood seems to have turned to stone because the original form and structure are retained. The wood itself does not turn to stone.
When does 0x0 equals 1?
Factorials are the product of a given number and all the factors less than that number. The notation n is used to express this idea. For example, 5 factorial is 5x 4x 3x 2x 1 equals 120. For completeness, 0 is assigned the value 1, so 0x0 equals 1.
What period of time has come to be known as the Golden Age of microbiology?
The era known as the Golden Age of microbiology began in 1857, with the work of Louis Pasteur and Robert Koch, and lasted about 60 years. During this period of time, there were many important scientific discoveries. Joseph Lister's, 1827 to 1912, practice of treating surgical wounds with a phenol solution led to the advent of aseptic surgery. The advancements Paul Ehrlich, 1854 to 1915, made to the theory of immunity synthesized the magic bullet, an arsenic compound that proved effective in treating syphilis in humans. In 1884 Elie Metchnikoff, 1845 to 1916, an associate of Pasteur, published a report on phagocytosis. The report explained the defensive process in which the body's white blood cells engulf and destroy microorganisms. In 1897, Masaki Ogata reported that rat fleas transmitted bubonic plague, ending the centuries-old mystery of how plague was transmitted. The following year, Kiyoshi Shiga, 1871–1957, isolated the bacterium responsible for bacterial dysentery. This organism was eventually named Shigella dysenteriae. During the golden age of microbiology, researchers identified the specific microorganism responsible for numerous infectious diseases. The following chart identifies many of these diseases, their infectious agent, who discovered them, and the year they were discovered.
Why do geese fly in formation?
Aerodynamicists have suspected that long-distance migratory birds, such as geese and swans, adapt the V formation in order to reduce the amount of energy needed for such long flights. According to theoretical calculations, birds flying in a V formation can fly some 10% farther than a lone bird can. Formation flying lessens the drag, the air pressure that pushes against the wings. The effect is similar to flying in a thermal upcurrent, where less total lift power is needed. In addition, when flying, each bird creates behind it a small area of disturbed air. Any bird flying directly behind it would be caught in this turbulence. In the V formation of Canada geese, each bird flies not directly behind the other, but to one side or above the bird in front.
What is Maxwell's demon?
An imaginary creature who, by opening and shutting a tiny door between two volumes of gases, could, in principle, concentrate slower molecules in one, making it colder, and faster molecules in the other, making it hotter, thus breaking the second law of thermodynamics. Essentially, this law states that heat does not naturally flow from a colder body to a hotter body. Work must be expended to make it do so. This hypothesis was formulated in 1871 by James C. Maxwell, 1831–1879, who is considered by many to be the greatest theoretical physicist of the 19th century. The demon would bring about an effective flow of molecular kinetic energy. This excess energy would be useful to perform work, and the system would be a perpetual motion machine. About 1950, the French physicist Léon Brillouin, 1889–1969, disproved Maxwell's hypothesis by demonstrating that the decrease in entropy resulting from the demon's actions would be exceeded by the increase in entropy in choosing between the fast and slow molecules.
Which well-known star is part of the Little Dipper?
The Little Dipper, part of the constellation Ursa Minor, is similar to the Big Dipper. It also has 7 bright stars that form the shape of a ladle. Polaris, the North Star, is at the end of the handle of the Little Dipper.
What is the largest group of insects that has been identified and classified?
The largest group of insects that has been identified and classified is the order Coleoptera. Beetles, weevils, and fireflies, with some 350,000 to 400,000 species. Beetles are the dominant form of life on Earth, as 1 of every 5 living species is a beetle.
What does it mean when a planet is said to be in opposition?
A body in the solar system is in opposition when its longitude differs from the Sun by 180 degrees. In that position, it is exactly opposite the Sun in the sky and it crosses the meridian at midnight.
What are effective types of pollination?
Effective pollination occurs when viable pollen is transferred to a plant's stigmas. Ovule-bearing organs, or ovules, seed precursors. Without pollination, there would be no fertilization. Since plants are immobile organisms, they usually need external agents to transport their pollen from where it is produced in the plant to where fertilization can occur. This situation produces cross-pollination, wherein one plant's pollen is moved by an agent to another plant's stigma. Some plants are able to self-pollinate, transfer their own pollen to their own stigmas. But of the 2 methods, cross-pollination seems more advantageous, for it allows new genetic material to be introduced. Cross-pollination agents include insects, wind, birds, mammals, and water. Many times flowers offer 1 or more rewards to attract these agents' sugary nectar. Oil, solid food bodies, perfume, a place to sleep, or sometimes the pollen itself. Other times the plant can trap the agent into transporting the pollen. Generally, plants use color and fragrances as attractants to lure these agents. For example, a few orchids use a combination of smell and color to mimic the female of certain species of bees and wasps so successfully that the corresponding males will attempt to mate with them. Through this process, pseudocopulation, the orchids achieve pollination. While some plants cater to a variety of agents, other plants are very selective and are pollinated by a single species of insect only. This extreme pollinator specificity tends to maintain the purity of a plant species. Plant structure can accommodate the type of agent used. For example, plants such as grasses and conifers, whose pollen is carried by the wind, tend to have a simple structure lacking petals, with freely exposed and branched stigmas. To catch airborne pollen and dangling anthers, pollen-producing parts, on long filaments. This type of anther allows the light round pollen to be easily caught by the wind. These plants are found in areas such as prairies and mountains, where insect agents are rare. In contrast, semi-enclosed, non-symmetrical, long-lived flowers such as irises, roses, and snapdragons have a landing platform and nectar in the flower base to accommodate insect agents such as the bee. The sticky, abundant pollen can easily become attached to the insect to be borne away to another flower.
What are isomers?
Isomers are compounds with the same molecular formula but different structures due to the different arrangement of the atoms within the molecules. Structural isomers have atoms connected in different ways. Geometric isomers differ in their symmetry about a double bond. Optical isomers are mirror images of each other.
Besides the light year, what other units are used to measure distances in astronomy?
The astronomical unit, O, is often used to measure distances within the solar system. 1 O is equal to the average distance between Earth and the Sun, or 92,955,630 miles, 149,597,870 kilometers. The parsec is equal to 3.26 light years, or about 19.18 trillion miles, 30.82 trillion kilometers.
Who coined the phrase survival of the fittest?
Although frequently associated with Darwinism, this phrase was coined by Herbert Spencer. 1820 to 1903, an English sociologist. It is the process by which organisms that are less well adapted to their environment tend to perish and better adapted organisms tend to survive.
How many different kinds of faults have been identified?
Faults are fractures in Earth's crust. Faults are classified as normal, reverse, or strike slip. Normal faults occur when the end of one plate slides vertically down the end of another. Reverse faults occur when one plate slides vertically up the end of another. A strike slip fault occurs when two plate ends slide past each other horizontally. In an oblique fault there is plate movement vertically and horizontally at the same time.
Which breed is known as the wrinkled dog?
The Shar-Pei, or Chinese fighting dog, is covered with folds of loose skin. It stands 18 to 20 inches, 46 to 51 centimeters, tall and weighs up to 50 pounds, 22.5 kilograms. Its solid colored coat can be black, red, fawn, or cream. The dog originated in Tibet or the northern provinces of China some 2,000 years ago. The People's Republic of China put such a high tax on Shar-Peis, however, that few people could afford to keep them, and the dog was in danger of extinction. But a few specimens were smuggled out of China, and the breed has made a comeback in the United States, Canada, and the United Kingdom. Although bred as a fighting dog, the Shar-Pei is generally an amiable companion.
Where are the northernmost and southernmost points of land?
The most northern point of land is Cape Morrisky, Jesup on the northeastern extremity of Greenland. It is at 83 degrees, 39 minutes north latitude and is 440 miles, 708 kilometers, from the North Pole. However, the Guinness Book of Records reports that an islet of 100 feet, 30 meters, across, called Udak, is more northerly at 83 degrees. 40 minutes north latitude and 438.9 miles, 706 kilometers, from the North Pole. The southernmost point of land is the South Pole, since the South Pole, unlike the North Pole, is on land. In the United States, the northernmost point of land is Point Barrow, Alaska, 71 degrees. 23 minutes north latitude, and the southernmost point of land is Kalat or South Cape. 18 degrees, 55 minutes north latitude, on the island of Hawaii, in the 48 contiguous states. The northernmost point is Northwest Angle, Minnesota, 49 degrees, 23 minutes north latitude. The southernmost point is Key West, Florida, 24 degrees, 33 minutes north latitude.
How are seedless grapes grown?
Since seedless grapes cannot reproduce in the manner that grapes usually do, i.e., dropping seeds, growers have to take cuttings from the plants, root them, and then plant the plant cuttings. Seedless grapes come from a naturally occurring mutation in which the hard seed casing fails to develop. Although the exact origin of seedless grapes is unknown, they might have been first cultivated thousands of years ago in present-day Iran or Afghanistan. Currently, 90% of all raisins are made from Thompson seedless grapes.
How does tennis elbow differ from golfer's elbow?
Tennis elbow and golfer's elbow are both injuries caused by overuse of the muscles of the forearm. Tennis elbow, also called lateral epicondylitis, affects the muscles of the forearm, which attach to the bony prominence on the outside of the elbow. Golfer's elbow, also called medial epicondylitis. Affects the muscles of the forearm that attach to the inside of the elbow.
What are the phases of the moon?
The phases of the moon are changes in the moon's appearance during the month, which are caused by the moon's turning different portions of its illuminated hemisphere toward Earth. When the moon is between Earth and the sun, its daylight side is turned away from Earth, so it is not seen. This is called the new moon. As the moon continues its revolution around Earth, more and more of its surface becomes visible. This is called the waxing crescent phase. About a week after the new moon, half the moon is visible, the first quarter phase. During the next week, more than half of the moon is seen. This is called the waxing gibbous phase. Finally, about 2 weeks after the moon and sun are on opposite sides of Earth. The side of the moon facing the sun is also facing Earth, and all the moon's illuminated side is seen as a full moon. In the next 2 weeks the moon goes through the same phases, but in reverse, from a waning gibbous to third or last quarter to waning crescent phase. Gradually, less and less of the moon is visible until a new moon occurs again.
If Earth were a uniform sphere, how much water would cover the surface?
It is estimated that 97% of all water in the world, or over 1 quadrillion acre-feet, 1,234 x 1,015 cubic meters, is contained within the oceans. If Earth were a uniform sphere, this volume of water would cover Earth to a depth of 800 feet, 244 meters.
When was the symbol of Smokey Bear first used to encourage forest fire prevention?
The origin of Smokey Bear can be traced to World War II, when the U.S. Forest Service, concerned about maintaining a steady lumber supply for the war effort, wished to educate the public about the dangers of forest fires. They sought volunteer advertising support from the War Advertising Council. And on August 9, 1944, Albert Steele, 1899–1974, a noted illustrator of animals, created Smokey Bear. Since 1944, Smokey Bear has been a national symbol of forest fire prevention, not only in America, but also in Canada and Mexico, where he is known as Simon. This public service advertising, PSA, campaign is the longest-running PSA campaign in U.S. history. In 1947, a Los Angeles advertising agency coined the slogan, "Only you can prevent forest fires." On April 23, 2001, after more than 50 years, the famous ad slogan was revised to "Only you can prevent wildfires" in response to the wildfire outbreaks during 2000. The campaign gained a living mascot in 1950 when A firefighting crew rescued a male bear cub from a forest fire in the Capitol Mountains of New Mexico. Sent to the National Zoo in Washington, D.C., to become Smokey Bear. The animal was a living symbol of forest fire protection until his death in 1976. His remains are buried at the Smokey Bear State Historical Park in Capitan, New Mexico.
How does water move up a tree?
Water is carried up a tree through the xylem tissue in a process called transpiration. Constant evaporation from the leaf creates a flow of water from root to shoot. The roots of a tree absorb the vast majority of water that a tree needs. The properties of cohesion and adhesion allow the water to move up a tree regardless of its height. Cohesion allows the individual water molecules to stick together in one continuous stream. Adhesion permits the water molecules to adhere to the cellulose molecules in the walls of xylem cells. When the water reaches a leaf, water is evaporated, thus allowing additional water molecules to be drawn up through the tree.
What is the significance of the recycling symbol?
The familiar recycling symbol consists of 3 arrows representing the 3 components of recycling.
What is the effect of a microburst on aircraft?
Microbursts are downbursts with a diameter of 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers, or less. Often associated with thunderstorms. They can generate winds of hurricane force that change direction abruptly. Headwinds can become tailwinds in a matter of seconds, resulting in a loss of airspeed and loss of altitude. After microbursts caused several major air catastrophes in the 1970s and 1980s. The Federal Aviation Administration, FAA, installed warning and radar systems at airports to alert pilots to wind shear and microburst conditions.
What is the medical term for a heart attack?
Myocardial infarction is the term used for a heart attack in which part of the heart muscle cells die as a result of reduced blood flow through one of the main arteries, many times due to arteriosclerosis. The outlook for the patient is dependent on the size and location of the blockage and extent of damage. But 33% of patients die within 20 days after the attack. It is a leading cause of death in the United States. Also, almost half of sudden deaths due to myocardial infarction occur before hospitalization. However, the possibility of recovery improves if vigorous treatment begins immediately.
When was Google founded?
In 1996, Stanford University graduate student Larry Page, 1973. And Sergey Brin, 1973, began collaborating on a search engine called Backrub. Backrub operated on the Stanford servers for more than a year until it began to take up too much bandwidth. In 1997, Page and Brin decided they needed a new name for the search engine and decided upon Google as a play on the mathematical term Google. A Google is the numeral 1 followed by 100 zeros. Their goal was to organize the seemingly infinite amount of information on the web. Google first incorporated as a company in September 1998 and the corporation went public in 2004.
When and where was gunpowder invented?
The explosive mixture of saltpeter, potassium nitrate, sulfur, and charcoal called gunpowder was known in China at least by 850 CE, and probably was discovered by Chinese alchemists searching for components to make artificial gold. Early mixtures had too little saltpeter, 50%. To be truly explosive, 75% minimum is needed to get a detonation. The first use of the mixture was in making fireworks. Later, the Chinese used it in incendiary-like weapons. Eventually it is thought that the Chinese found the correct proportions to utilize its explosive effects in rockets and bamboo bullets. However, some authorities still maintain that the Chinese gunpowder really had only pyrotechnic qualities, and true gunpowder was a European invention. Roger Bacon, 1214 to 1292, had a formula for it and so might have the German monk Berthold Schwarz, who is believed to have lived in the 14th century. The year 1353 is often given as the date of his invention of gunpowder. Its first European use depended on the development of firearms in the 14th century. Not until the 17th century was gunpowder used in peacetime. For mining and civil engineering applications.
Who is generally known as the founder of genetics?
Gregor Mendel, 1822 to 1884, an Austrian monk and biologist, is considered the founder of genetics. Mendel was the first to demonstrate transmission of distinct physical characteristics from generation to generation through his work with the garden pea. It was the English biologist William Bateson, 1861 to 1926, however, who brought Mendel's work to the attention of the scientific world and who coined the term genetics.
What are the diameter and circumference of the Moon?
The Moon's diameter is 2,159 miles, 3,475 kilometers. And its circumference is 6,790 miles, 10,864 kilometers. The Moon is 27% the size of Earth.
Is Pluto a planet?
When Pluto was first discovered in 1930 by American astronomer Clyde Tombaugh, 1906 to 1997, it was considered the ninth planet of our solar system. During the late 1990s and the beginning of the 21st century, astronomers began to discover more objects orbiting beyond Neptune in the area known as the trans-Neptunian region. On the night of October 21, 2003, Mike Brown from Caltech, Chad Trujillo from the Gemini Observatory, and David Rabinovitz from Yale University discovered a new object more massive than Pluto with its own satellite. The International Astronomical Union, IAU, began to debate the question of what constitutes a planet. In 2006, the IAU approved a new definition of a planet. This definition states that a planet is an object in orbit around the Sun, an object with sufficient mass, large enough to have its self-gravity pull itself into a round or near spherical shape, has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit of other objects. Pluto no longer meets the definition of a planet because of its size, and it is in the trans-Neptunian region, a zone of other similarly sized objects. Instead, Pluto is a dwarf planet.
What causes waves in the ocean?
The most common cause of surface waves is air movement, the wind. Waves within the ocean can be caused by tides, interactions among waves, submarine earthquakes or volcanic activity, and atmospheric disturbances. Wave size depends on wind speed, wind duration, and the distance of water over which the wind blows. The longer the distance the wind travels over water, or the harder it blows, the higher the waves. As the wind blows over water, it tries to drag the surface of the water with it. The surface cannot move as fast as air, so it rises. When it rises, gravity pulls the water back, carrying the falling water's momentum below the surface. Water pressure from below pushes the swell back up again. The tug of war between gravity and water pressure constitutes wave motion. Capillary waves are caused by breezes of less than 2 knots. At 13 knots the waves grow taller and faster than they grow longer, and their steepness causes them to break, forming whitecaps. For a whitecap to form, the wave height must be 1/7 the distance between wave crests.
What was the first successful video arcade game?
Pong, a simple electronic version of a tennis game, was the first successful video arcade game. Although it was first marketed in 1972, Pong was actually invented 14 years earlier in 1958 by William Higginbotham. 1910 to 1994, who, at the time, headed instrumentation design at Brookhaven National Laboratory. Invented to amuse visitors touring the laboratory. The game was so popular that visitors would stand in line for hours to play it. Higginbotham dismantled the system 2 years later, and, considering it a trifle, did not patent it. In 1972, Atari released Pong, an arcade version of Higginbotham's game. And Magnavox released Odyssey, a version that could be played on home televisions.
What are some common culinary herbs?
Herbs are often used to enhance flavors in food. They are usually from the leaves of non-woody plants.
Who was the first man in space?
Yuri Gagarin, 1934 to 1968, a Soviet cosmonaut, became the first man in space when he made a full orbit of Earth in Vostok I on April 12, 1961. Gagarin's flight lasted only 1 hour and 48 minutes. But as the first man in space, he became an international hero. Partly because of this Soviet success, U.S. President John F. Kennedy, 1917 to 1963, announced on May 25, 1961, that the United States would land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. The United States took its first step toward that goal when it launched the first American into orbit on February 20, 1962. Astronaut John H. Glenn Jr., 1921. Completed 3 orbits in Friendship 7 and traveled about 81,000 miles, 130,329 kilometers. Prior to this, on May 5, 1961, Alan B. Shepard Jr., 1923 to 1998, became the first American to pilot a space flight. Aboard Freedom 7. This suborbital flight reached an altitude of 116.5 miles, 187.45 kilometers.